loved that my parents expected me to have opinions and to be able to back them up with facts.
Oh, Chelsea. That is not very Clinton-like of you. No, Chelsea. Chelsea Clinton talking about how her parents taught her to back up things with facts. You're talking about two of the most notorious liars in political history, Hillary and Bill Clinton. But they told me to be opinionated and to back it up with facts. If anything is beyond reason, that is Beyond Reason. This is another edition of Beyond Reason Radio. I am your host, Michael Yaffee, your voice of reason, your voice of truth in a world that is beyond reason. We have a lot to talk about, to get to talking about the Democrat convention last night. Or, was it trying to be a Tea Party convention? Was it trying to be a Republican convention in a lot of ways? I mean, think about it. Think about what they did and why they did it. I mean, okay. First off, this week, you have Obama. This is how backwards, this is how crazy, this is how beyond reason this whole political season has been. And it's basically full of lies, full of deceit on both sides. I'm watching the speech last night, and most of it from Hillary, and most of it is fluff. They're trying to do two things, the Democrat Party. They're trying desperately to convince us that Hillary Clinton is a likable, nice, gracious person who loves the country. That was all over the convention last night. That was all over her speech last night. They're trying desperately to convince us, no, Hillary's not a liar. No, Hillary's not a bad person. No, Hillary's not deceitful. No, she's actually a really great person who cares about the children. So that's what they try to convince us that. The second thing they try to convince us of is that the Democrat Party is just as patriotic as the Republican Party, if not more patriotic. The Democrat Party loves the Constitution just as much as the Republican Party. The Democrat Party loves our founders just as much as the Republican Party. They tried desperately last night to convince us of that. They also try to portray optimism because they're trying to be different than Donald Trump in the Republican convention, which was pointing out all of the problems. This was trying to say America is great as it is. Will the American people buy it? I don't know. But it's hard to convince me that you're the patriotic party when the first day of the convention you had no American flags. At a presidential convention, they couldn't find American flags. They had to go find some. But they calculated. They knew people had a problem with that. So they made sure on the last night when Hillary spoke, because most people were going to watch that, they had flags everywhere. They're just as patriotic. They are the new patriotic country. This is crazy to me. Well, first off, let me give you an example. This is how backwards world, this is how beyond reason world politics is today. Listen to something Obama said in his speech a couple days ago.
America is already great. America is already strong. And I promise you, our strength, our greatness, does not depend on Donald Trump. In fact, it doesn't depend on any one person. And that, in the end, may be the biggest difference in this election. The meaning of our democracy. Ronald Reagan called America a shining city on a hill. Donald Trump calls it a divided crime scene that only he can fix. It doesn't matter to him that illegal immigration and the crime rate are as low as they've been in decades, because he's not actually offering any real solutions to those issues. He's just offering slogans, and he's offering fear. He's betting that if he scares enough people, he might score just enough votes to win this election.
So Obama, in that speech, is one, he mentions Ronald Reagan the shining city on a hill. He mentions that not one person can fix the country, not a president, even though his whole campaign, when he started, was hope and change of this one guy. He mentions illegal immigration. He actually mentions illegal immigration and saying, under my presidency, he tries to convince us that illegal immigration hasn't been a problem under his presidency. It's like Obama is trying to convince us that he's actually more conservative than Trump. And yet, when Trump spoke at the Republican convention, so you have Obama, who talks about Reagan, who tries to convince us he's conservative, who tries to convince us about limited government in his speech. Then you have Trump last week say this.
I have seen firsthand how the system is rigged against our citizens, just like it was rigged against Bernie Sanders. He never had a chance. Never had a chance. But his supporters will join our movement because we will fix his biggest single issue, trade deals that strip our country of its jobs and strip us of our wealth as a country.
So you have Obama trying to convince us that he's more like Reagan, that Hillary is more like Reagan, that the Democrat Party is optimism, and trying to court conservatives. And then you have Donald Trump last week in the Republican convention try to convince us, try to court Bernie Sanders supporters, try to convince us that he's in line with a lot of what Bernie Sanders, the socialist, believes, talking about protectionism, which is usually a Democrat Party thing, and he's trying to get them. How is this happening? That was not the only example of that in the Democrat convention, by the way. Obama talked about Reagan. They actually had one of Reagan's former staffers on stage talk about how he's going to vote for Clinton. Other people mention patriotism. In fact, this week as well, they had a Muslim father of a war veteran who died in Iraq, who was a Muslim. And he gets up and he mentions something that you would think would be said in a Tea Party event. This is what he said.
Let me ask you, have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy.
It's so obvious what's happening. The Democrat Party is trying to convert disaffected Republicans and conservatives into the party who are upset at Trump. Then you have Trump, who's trying to get disaffected Bernie Sanders supporters who don't like Hillary into the Republican Party. So instead of both sides courting their base, they're trying to get the other party's base involved. I have no idea if this will work. Honestly, after watching the convention, both convention, people keep trying to tell me Trump's going to win, he's going to win big, and I don't see it. The Democrat convention, except for the first day, which you saw me on Monday's show, I was laughing hysterically. What a disaster. But they portrayed optimism. They portrayed vision in the future for the country. Most of it was platitudes, not real solutions. But they talked about the love of country and love of the founders. What's happening here? And we have Trump, who is doing the opposite. He doesn't mention limited government, doesn't mention the Constitution. Now, don't get me wrong. Hillary Clinton does not care about the Constitution, does not care about limited government, does not have this love for country, and most Democrats don't have this love for country. But they're trying to portray an image that they do because most of the American people out there do have a love for country, do have a love for the Constitution, even though a lot don't understand it. This tells me that we had a real opportunity here. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. We had an opportunity here to put someone in office who could talk about optimism for the future, who could talk about the Constitution, who could talk about limited government and free markets, who could portray that Ronald Reagan type optimism. We had an opportunity here to do that, and we blew it. We blew it. We instead elected someone who inspires anger, who doesn't care about limited government, who never talks about the founders of the Constitution. So he's too busy trying to court Bernie Sanders supporters over protectionism, and the Democrat Party's trying to convince conservatives to vote Democratic. One thing that this does say is that the two-party system quite possibly could be crumbling. Because what both parties are realizing is that there are a lot of people in both parties who are sick of the two-party system, who are sick of having to vote for each party, who are done with both of them. So they're trying to convince the disaffected people in both parties to come to their side. I mean, listen to part of Hillary's speech last night. I never thought I would hear Hillary talk about this. This is the kind of thing that you would usually talk about in a Republican convention, in a conservative convention, in a Tea Party convention. This is what she said.
We've come to Philadelphia, the birthplace of our nation, because what happened in this city 240 years ago still has something to teach us today. We all know the story, but we usually focus on how it turned out, and not enough on how close that story came to never being written at all. When representatives from 13 unruly colonies met just down the road from here, some wanted to stick with the king, and some wanted to stick it to the king. The revolution hung in the balance. Then somehow they began listening to each other, compromising, finding common purpose. And by the time they left Philadelphia, they had begun to see themselves as one nation. That's what made it possible to stand up to a king. That took courage. They had courage. Our founders embraced the enduring truth that we are stronger together.
She spoke over a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes, on the founding of this country, on the founding fathers. The Democrat base doesn't care about the founding fathers. According to them, the founding fathers were racist, bigoted, uninformed. That's the past. But she's trying to court conservatives. And we have our party trying to court Bernie Sanders supporters. What's amazing, though, is don't believe the lie that she's saying. She has no intentions of going back to the Constitution. She has no intentions of limited government. They don't care about limited government. You know, one thing that they all feared at the beginning of this country, the history of this country, was centralization of power. This is where both parties get it wrong. And I thought of this today, and it really hit me today. Both parties do not understand what this country is really all about. What our founders feared the most was the centralization of power. And that happens in government. They feared the centralization of power in government and tyranny from a centralized force. Because that's what they were getting from Britain. It was all centralized power, and the people who lived in the colonies, in their separate colonies, in their separate private property, had no rights among their individual selves or their colonies. In the states and the colonies, when they were creating this constitution, yeah, there was some compromise. Of course there was. But what they feared most was centralized power. That's why they created the Articles of Confederation, which was not centralized at all. And they realized they needed to have some kind of centralized power, a little bit, to have union for national security. But they created a republic that had checks and balances. They created a republic that provided for the common defense, but that the states also had individual rights. And you know, the Democrat Party loves to talk about how they're the party of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson feared parts of the new Constitution. He feared the power of the president in the Constitution. He feared the power of government. He said it would not work without a Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights had to be put in place later, and luckily it was under James Madison, who was a friend of Thomas Jefferson. Later on, he opposed Alexander Hamilton and George Washington on the central bank, on the national bank. Why? What was his reason and what was Madison's reason? Because there was no authority in the Constitution to give the government that power. They feared centralized power. They feared centralized control. And yet, we have a government now that is completely centralized. We don't really think about this. But can you buy a house? You know how incredibly hard it is to buy a house without government involvement? Through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, government's involved in your housing. Through Obamacare, government's involved in your health care. Education, the federal government's involved in your education, in your kids' education through Common Core, public institutions. Student loans is now owned by the federal government. The government's involved in energy with the Department of Energy. The government is involved in so many aspects, and I'm talking the federal government, the centralized government, but even local governments do that. They're involved in so many aspects of our lives. And the only way they can do that is continue to centralize power. And you talk about the power of the president. Obama has abused the power of the presidency more than anyone with his executive orders. And yet the Republican Party is now voting for a guy in Donald Trump who also wants to centralize power. It's obvious. He alone can fix it. And yet they're both wrong. It was about limited government. And you know, the Republican Party, they talk about limited government, but they also want centralized power. But their centralized power is in big business. So the Republican Party stands for big business, which Donald Trump, in a lot of ways, is a symbol of big business. And then you have the Democrat Party, which is the symbol of big government, centralized power. Now, the only way big business can be centralized and have power is with a big government. The reason why big business is so powerful is because big government allows them to be that way. They control competition. They give those big businesses their power. They have special influences with big government. So either party, either person we elect is going to grow the size of government. And yet, when we're really talking about the founders, that is what they feared the most. So the Democrat Party talks a good game. Hillary Clinton talks about the founders. They all talk about love of country and Constitution. Yet Hillary Clinton wants to expand the scope of government even more, wants to expand, wants people have to be more reliant on the government, more dependent on the government. She wants to expand education, free school, preschool. How is that possible? Has to be done through expanding the power of government. Wants free healthcare for everything. How is that possible? Has to be done through the expanding power of government. Wants to break up the big banks. How is that possible? Can only be done through the expanding power of government. Wants more affordable housing for everyone. How is that possible? Through the expanding power of government. The Democrat Party talks about how they're the party of the people, the party of the individual, the party of the small guy. Yet while they're doing it, the only way they can accomplish all these goals is to grow a centralized, powerful government. They talk bad about big banks, but they love big government, and do not forget that. They want you to forget that right now. Other than Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, they want you to forget that. Don't forget it, because that's where they are. And unfortunately, the Republican Party this year had a real opportunity. They had a real chance to talk about limited government, to talk about the Constitution, to talk about free markets and free trade, to talk about all of these things. Entrepreneurship. Love of the founding of this country. And they blew it. And the Democrat Party saw that, and they're trying to capitalize on it. So now, people like you and me, who really have studied the founders, who really revere the Constitution, who really believe in individual liberty, who is sick and tired of big government that is in bed with big business, who is sick and tired of all of this, what do we do? People don't know what to do, and they feel more disaffected than ever, and the parties are breaking up, because there is one thing that has happened that both parties did not count on, that the big power structures did not count on. They're trying to use it now, but that's the internet. The internet's given a lot of freedom to the individual, and they're trying to use the internet to once again centralize power, but it's become very difficult. So there is hope for the future. But we have to get to a place where either the Republican Party or another party just wants to get rid of what some have called the bigs. Centralized power in control over our lives. I'm going to play in the next segment. Hillary Clinton, in her speech, quoted Alexis de Tocqueville, once again trying to court conservatives. Well, I have Alexis de Tocqueville's book right here, Democracy in America. I'm going to talk about what he talked about, the dangers he saw coming, and how it describes today, and how Hillary Clinton is the last person who should be able to quote Alexis de Tocqueville. We're going to get to that. We have a lot of other stuff to get to as well. You are listening to Beyond Reason. I'm going to end the show, by the way. I'm going to end the show like I never had before. I got a Beyond Reason movie review. I saw the new Jason Bourne movie earlier this week. It just came out, so if you're thinking about going to see it, wait until my review, and I'll tell you exactly what I thought of it. And we'll get to that next. You are listening to Beyond Reason Radio. You can comment on the show on Facebook Live or on the app, and we will be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes.
There are so many clothing fads out there that are just beyond reason. But here at Beyond Reason Radio, we want to let you in on a new patriotic fad that will never fade. That fad stands for Freedom All Day. Freedom All Day is the latest apparel brand for the true patriot who is not afraid to show it. Their mission is to give people an opportunity to show patriotism all year and to do it while looking good. Check out their latest stuff, including their newest t-shirts at freedomallDayapparel.com. At freedomallDayapparel.com, you can find all kinds of different cool-looking t-shirts, and they are all made in America. Go to freedomallDayapparel.com and be part of the fad that never fades.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I do this show every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. right here at BeyondReasonRadio.com on Facebook Live. Just follow me on Facebook. Search Beyond Reason Radio on Facebook and like the Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. You can download the Beyond Reason Radio app on the Google Play or Apple App Store. So I talked about in the last segment how crazy things are. How the Democrat Party is trying to convince you they're conservative constitutionalists now, at least at the convention they did, and how the Republican Party under Donald Trump's trying to convince you they're more like Bernie Sanders. Things seem backwards, and what's amazing is neither party has it right. What's amazing is both parties are fighting for more power, more centralized power in government and in big business, and the individual American, you know, Trump said he is the voice of the people. No, the people have been forgotten. The individual American who just wants to do his job, take care of his or her family, practice his or her religious beliefs, study based on his own conscience. That individual American's being forgotten. The individual American who wants to start his own business, his or her own business. The individual American who just wants to be a stay-at-home mother, though that American's being forgotten. We used to be a country where we took care of each other. We had different groups to take care of each other. It wasn't equal. It wasn't perfect. But we were family-based. We had our churches. We had our community groups. And now we have a centralized government that wants to take control of it all. You have competing forces. You have big government that says, I'll take care of everything you need. And then you have big business, which gets its power by being in bed with big government, telling you, I'm going to take care of everything you need. And neither of them can't. And neither party gets that. Only going back to the Constitution and going back to individual liberty and going back to a true free market, which the government's out of, can we get back to those principles. But we say, oh, we have to vote for one of them. We have to vote for one of them. It reminds me, when people say that, it reminds me of a Simpsons episode where people had to say that. I remember this episode. It was really fun. I'm sure you've heard it before, but it totally explains where we are right now.
America, take a good look at your beloved candidates. They're nothing but hideous space reptiles. It's true. We are aliens. But what are you going to do about it? It's a two-party system. You have to vote for one of us.
You're right. This is a two-party system.
Well, I believe I'll vote for a third-party candidate.
Go ahead. Throw your vote away.
That episode's great, but it's really telling. They find out that both candidates are actually secret reptilian aliens. And they're like, well, you have to vote for one of us. And they're like, I'm going to vote third party. Oh, throw your vote away. So they become enslaved. It didn't matter who they were going to vote for. They became enslaved. I mean, we laugh. It's a joke. It's funny, but it's kind of where we are. And I've said before, I was not a never Trump person. I still might vote for Donald Trump. Definitely better than Hillary. I wanted to vote third party, but Gary Johnson's terrible as well. I mean, there was nobody else. And that's sad in itself. But we have to get away from this two-party system. I really thought we could reform the Republican Party within itself, bring it back to constitutionalism, individual liberty, and rights. But with Donald Trump, all that's been thrown out the window. I don't know how people can't see it. There is no... I guarantee you that no matter who gets elected, government's going to get bigger. And, you know, Hillary Clinton talks about how she wants to take big money out of politics. You can't by growing government. And plus, she loves big money in politics. Just look at the Clinton Foundation. So Hillary Clinton, once again trying to court those conservatives, said something during her speech that was kind of interesting. She quotes, well, this is what it is, and I'll tell you where the source of it is from.
It comes down to what Donald Trump doesn't get. America is great because America is good.
Now, that is a quote attributed to Alexis de Tocqueville. Alexis de Tocqueville, if you don't know, he wrote Democracy in America in the 1800s. He, was a philosopher, but he was from France, came over to America, wanted to study America, the new country, and what made it great, what its strengths were. And he saw a lot of strengths. He realized how much he loved this country. But he also talked about its weaknesses in the future. What could hurt America in the long run? But he is attributed with the quote, America is great because she is good. So Hillary Clinton decides she wants to quote de Tocqueville. Well, I'm going to read some stuff in the next segment from his book, Democracy in America. I have it right here. That tells you that Hillary Clinton does not understand de Tocqueville, and that many warnings of de Tocqueville, Alexis de Tocqueville, I guess I should just say Tocqueville. De Tocqueville is, of Tocqueville. I don't know. But anyway, Alexis de Tocqueville gave some warnings about the future that we are facing right now. Don't buy into the lie that all of a sudden the Democrat Party's for small government, for the founding documents, for individual rights. They're not. Just think about all the stuff that government is in control of now and how much more control they want. They say they're doing it for the little guy, but it can only be done through centralized power. And anytime, and our founders understood this better than anyone, anytime you have centralized power, centralized authority, you take away the freedom of the people. He talked about that in his book, Democracy in America, and I'm going to get to that next. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio here at BeyondReasonRadio.com and the Beyond Reason Radio app. I'll be right back.
You know what's Beyond Reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio.
There are so many clothing fads out there that are just beyond reason. But here at Beyond Reason Radio, we want to let you in on a new patriotic fad that will never fade. That fad stands for Freedom All Day. Freedom All Day is the latest apparel brand for the true patriot who is not afraid to show it. Their mission is to give people an opportunity to show patriotism all year and to do it while looking good. Check out their latest stuff, including their newest t-shirts at freedomallDayapparel.com. At freedomallDayapparel.com, you can find all kinds of different cool-looking t-shirts, and they are all made in America. Go to freedomallDayapparel.com and be part of the fad that never fades.
If you like Beyond Reason Radio, well, make sure to show it by liking the Facebook page at facebook.com/Beyond Reason Radio.
It comes down to what Donald Trump doesn't get. America is great because America is good.
That was Hillary Clinton quoting Alexis de Tocqueville, writer of the book Democracy in America. She's trying to convince, she talked about the founders, they talked about Reagan. The Democrat Party's trying to make you convince you that conservatives can come on over. They love the country. They love the Constitution. They love the Founding Fathers. They're just as patriotic, even though they forgot flags the first day. But don't forget what they're really all about. And actually, Hillary Clinton said it in her speech as well. What else is the cause of the Democrat Party?
Bernie, your campaign inspired millions of Americans, particularly the young people who threw their hearts and souls into our primary. You've put economic and social justice issues front and center where they belong. And to all of your supporters here and around the country, I want you to know, I've heard you. Your cause is our cause.
So the cause, I'm of socialist Bernie Sanders is now the cause of the Democrat Party. I am so sick, and Trump's doing this. I am so sick of both parties appealing to Bernie Sanders, talking about how much they like Bernie Sanders. He's a socialist. He's a communist. He does not believe in this country. He does not support Israel. He does not in any way support the Constitution, the Founding Fathers, limited government. He wants to expand and grow centralized government. Yes, he thinks he wants to do it for the people. He hates capitalism, which has brought more prosperity than the earth had ever seen before. And yet we have all this praise of this commie. It's really frustrating. So they say that, but then later she quotes de Tocqueville. Well, let me read you what Alexis de Tocqueville warned us about in Democracy in America. He feared that one day, this is from his book, I have it right here, that one day America might fall into a type of tyranny, might fall into a type of despotism. But it was different than what people had thought. But he warned us this could happen. When I read it, you're going to be scared because it sounds a lot like what is trying to happen today and what the Democrat Party's doing, who Hillary Clinton is the head of. This is what he said. If despotism were to be established in present-day democracies, it would probably assume a different character. It would be more widespread and kinder. The Democrat Party is all trying to be kinder. It would debase men without tormenting them. So how do you do that? How do you have despotism? Because before America, despotism always happened at iron, violence, kings, conquerors. But that's not what he feared. He feared something else. He said, I wish to imagine under what new features despotism might appear in the world. I see an innumerable crowd of men, all alike and equal. They always talk about equality in the Democrat Party. Turned in upon themselves in a restless search for those petty, vulgar pleasures which will fill their souls. This is Alexis de Tocqueville. This is what he warned us about. Each of them, living apart, is almost unaware of the destiny of all the rest. His children and personal friends are for him the whole of the human race. As for the remainder of his fellow citizens, he stands alongside them but does not see them. He touches without feeling them. He exists only in himself and of himself and for himself. If he still retains his family circle, at any rate he may be said to have lost his country. Talking about how people will become selfish in their desires, and that will be their whole world, and they won't care about the cause of the country. Sounds familiar? He continues along here. Above these men stands an immense and protective power, which alone is responsible for looking after their enjoyment and watching over their destiny. This is what he predicted would happen. It is absolute, meticulous, ordered, provident, and kindly disposed. It would be like a fatherly authority if, father-like, its aim were to prepare men for manhood, but it seeks only to keep them in perpetual childhood. Talking about how a central authority, a central government, would come along and act like their provider, their protector, their father, or their mother. Except that they would keep people in perpetual childhood instead of allowing them to grow for themselves. This is what's happening today with big government. He continues on here, it prefers its citizens to enjoy themselves provided they have only enjoyment in mind. It works readily for their happiness, but it wishes to be the only provider and judge of it. It provides their security, anticipates their guarantees and their needs, supplies their pleasures, directs their principal concerns, manages their industry, regulates their estates, divides their inheritances. This is what's happening. You have the inheritance tax. Regulates their estates. The government's all over that. Regulates industry. That's what's happening. Provides for everything. Can you say universal health care, universal child care, universal education? he continues on, why can it not remove from them entirely the bother of thinking and the troubles of life? Thus, it reduces daily the value and frequency of the exercise of free choice. It will provide everything, but by providing everything, it will take away their own choices, their freedom. It restricts the activity of free will with a narrow range and gradually removes autonomy itself from each citizen. They always talk equality, don't they? They don't want autonomy of the citizen. They want the government to take care of you. Equality has prepared men for all of this. Equality. Remember? Inclining them to tolerate all these things, and often even to see them as a blessing. Look what he says next. This is what's happening. This is de Tocqueville, who Hillary Clinton quoted, yet de Tocqueville warned us of the things that Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party, both parties, are frankly doing to us. Thus, the ruling power, having taken each citizen one by one into its powerful grasp and having molded him to its own liking, it's happening, political correctness, spreads its arms over the whole of society, covering the surface of social life with a network of petty, complicated, detailed, and uniform rules through which even the most original minds and the most energetic of spirits cannot reach the light in order to rise above the crowd. Interesting. He's talking about here how there's going to be such a push for equality, which you hear all the time. Oh, there's economic inequality. Inequality is a problem. We need to be equal. We can only do that by taxing the rich and redistributing it to everyone else so we can be more equal. But what happens when you do that? You take away what it says here. You take away the original mind. You take away the people, the energetic of spirits who want to reach the light in order to rise above the crowd. They will no longer be able to do that. It does not break men's will, but it does soften, bend, and control them. Rarely does it force men to act, but it constantly opposes what actions they perform. It does not destroy the start of anything, but it stands in its way. How much does government stand in the way of you pursuing your individual desires? It does not tyrannize, but it inhibits, represses, drains, snuffs out, dulls so much effort that finally it reduces each nation to nothing more than a flock of timid and hard-working animals with the government as its shepherd. I have always believed that this type of organized, gentle, and peaceful enslavement just described could link up more easily than imagined with some of the external forms of freedom, and that it would not be impossible for it to take hold in the very shadow of the sovereignty of the people. This is Alexis de Tocqueville, Democracy in America, who Hillary Clinton quoted. And yet, what did he describe? He described a country where we just have our own selfish desires and we don't care about the future of the country as a whole, where equality is what's pushed. And I'm not talking about equality of opportunity. I'm talking about equality. Everyone's equal is pushed. Where we just want to be comfortable, where we just want to pursue our pleasures, where we are put in perpetual childhood, and where government steps in by the will of the people, which he says, where government steps in and acts as our provider, our comforter, our healer, our father. And by doing that, by them making everything equal, by regularizing everything, they take away imagination. They take away innovation. They take away the spirit of the person who wants to rise above the crowd and to path a new way for himself. That's what's happening, and it's happening in both parties. You have big government doing this, and you have big business doing it with the help of big government. Be careful who you follow. That is why individual liberty is so important. That is why the Constitution is so important. That is why freedom is important. When they talk equality, Don't buy the lie. Who wants to be equal? If we are all equal, then who can be special? Who can rise above and use our imagination, innovation to rise above the crowd? What purpose would there be to rise above the crowd? There would be none. You have Bernie Sanders and others supporting that. That is why I fight for what I do. Some have called what he calls it's soft tyranny, liberal fascism. And it's coming, and it's more and more, and it's done by that very person, that very party who this week tried to tell you they love the founders, who this week tried to tell you that they're conservatives, who they say they love freedom, who they say they love success, who they say they love individual opportunity. No. They want you to be sheeple as they take care of you like a little child. That's where it is. That is amazing. I just read that. I picked that up and read it today because of what Hillary quoting de Tocqueville in her speech, and it floored me how telling that really was. You were listening to Beyond Reason Radio. I am going to end the show with a little bit of fun. We are going to do the Beyond Reason movie review. I'll tell you what I saw the latest Jason Bourne movie, which just came out today. I saw it, and I'm going to give you my review, and I'm going to tell you the good and the bad about it. You're listening to Beyond Reason Radio here at BeyondReasonRadio.com and the Beyond Reason Radio app.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com.
There are so many clothing fads out there that are just beyond reason. But here at Beyond Reason Radio, we want to let you in on a new patriotic fad that will never fade. That fad stands for Freedom All Day. Freedom All Day is the latest apparel brand for the true patriot who is not afraid to show it. Their mission is to give people an opportunity to show patriotism all year and to do it while looking good. Check out their latest stuff, including their newest t-shirts at freedomallDayapparel.com. At freedomallDayapparel.com, you can find all kinds of different cool-looking t-shirts, and they are all made in America. Go to freedomallDayapparel.com and be part of the fad that never fades.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio, your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. Orlando Smart Talk Radio, the voice of the millennial generation. I am Mike Yaffee. We talk faith, culture, and politics every Monday and Friday at 8 p.m. And we've talked a lot of politics today because the convention ended this week, but I want to shift gears a little bit. We're going to do this a little bit more often. We're going to end the show with some fun, and especially if you want to go see a movie over the weekend. I've decided to do the first ever Beyond Reason Radio movie review, the Beyond Reason movie review. And I'll tell you what I thought. Now, the movie I saw this week was Jason Bourne. Now, Jason Bourne is the next installment of the Bourne Identity series. If you know anything about the movies, I'm sure you do. He was a super soldier who was created, by the government. He was used to assassinate people. He had a crisis of conscience, lost his memory, and became good, and became against the government. Well, in this latest one, he is in hiding. He is in hiding. He's just trying to survive. He's not trying to affect anything. But someone he knew used to be in the CIA, who now was on his side. Her name is played by Julia Stiles, but her name's Nikki Parsons. Finds him, wants to reveal the truth to him. Truth he did not know. Truth about his father. Truth about why he did what he did. And this encourages Jason Bourne to come and once again fight against the corrupt system. Fight against the corrupt CIA who made him do the bad things he did. Because he wants to find the truth. That's really what he wants. He wants to find the truth. Now, this movie has a ton of action. Like all the Jason Bourne movies, this movie has a ton of action. It does a lot of shaky cam. It does it a lot better than most movies that do it. But there's a ton of action. And there's, some of the stuff, he would never survive that stuff. But he goes and fights, and while this is happening, the CIA is also trying to get in bed with a big social media company to basically spy on all citizens. I will tell you something. I actually really enjoyed this movie. If you're looking for a movie that has a lot of action, if you're looking for a movie that kind of helps you escape and you like explosions, you like fighting, you like all that stuff, this is the movie for you. I'm a big sucker for like spy thrillers and everything. This was a great movie. Like all the other Jason Bourne movie, it has a lot of action. Matt Damon does great as Jason Bourne. And some people didn't like this, but I like that it tried to tie it in with current times. It had a second theme in there about government overreach, about government trying to get involved in our privacy through getting in bed with social media. It's a big issue today, and it becomes an issue. So the action is good. The acting is good. Let me tell you what I did not like about the movie, though, before we run out of time. The one thing that these movies lacks, that the movie lack, is personality. That's the one thing I kind of wish this had personality. It's hard. You kind of sympathize with Jason Bourne, but it's hard to. And then Julia Stiles' character, Nikki Parsons, she just doesn't have the emotion. You're not really sure why she's helping Jason Bourne. You're not really sure if she's emotionally invested. And then there's the assistant CIA director, Heather Leaves, played by Alicia Vikander. She has like no emotion at all during the movie. At all. It's hard, there's times where she tries to sympathize with Jason Bourne and you want more emotion, you want more personality, you want a little bit of comedy thrown in there, just a little bit of personality. Tom Cruise in his action movies is really good at doing that. In these movies, it's all raw, it's all real, it's all in your face, it's all action and intense the whole time. And I like that, but I just wish there was a little personality. The other thing is, one thing I really did like, though, about the movie was Tommy Lee Jones plays the CIA director. There's a part of you that almost sympathizes with his character, that almost sympathizes with what the CIA director, why he wanted to take over, why he wants to be in bed with social media, why he wanted the super soldier program and wants more of it. He honestly believes that he's doing it for the best interest of the country. He honestly believes that these things has to be done to keep the country safe, which is a debate that we're in today. And I liked that. It almost humanized. You don't like him as a villain, but you almost understand him a little better, and that makes, to me anyway, that makes a better villain. So, Jason Bourne, go see it this week. If you're looking for some fun, looking for first action, good action movie to help you escape, go see it. I give it 3.5 out of 5 Yaffies. How about that? 3.5 Yaffies out of 5. 3.5 Yaffies out of 5. Go see Jason Bourne. I liked it. If you like that kind of movie, it won't disappoint. All right. Wow, fast show. Learned a lot. I will end with a verse since we were talking about individuals here. I think it's very telling. Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Rise above the crowd, everybody. Don't follow like sheeple. I'll be back on Monday.